All right, welcome everybody to This Is Awesome. This is the Thank you, Brent. This is the weekly pro wrestling recap with Hot Take Jake and our buddy Brent, who hasn't come up with a handle yet. You got to work on
Yeah.
that.
No, whatever.
Well, and as we all know, we do need more wrestling recap podcasts. That's
Yes,
we talked
always.
about it a little bit last week. There's just this void that there's not enough.
Yeah, there really isn't enough people on the internet dissecting professional wrestling.
Well, I'm
Although
glad
there's some people that dissect it a little bit too much.
this is
There's
true.
there's some really rough wrestling takes out there. So,
Well, we'll see how this goes with this show, I guess.
well, no, it's not. Well, no matter what, I know that we're decent human beings. There's some people out there that are calling like Javon Evans a slave and stuff like that on wrestling podcasts. So
Okay, yes,
yeah,
that's I think we're a little bit better than that.
yeah, we're not gonna stoop to those kinds of levels.
Yeah, well, we have a lot to cover this week. We have still a lot of meat on the bone coming off of WrestleMania weekend.
Oh, there's so much meat.
Oh, it is a meat
It
extravaganza.
is meat madness over here.
If you are paying attention to us, looks like we might have a couple people. We appreciate it. Like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. Which is the This Is Awesome Podcast Network. And if you're on Twitter X, you can follow me at Jacob Anderson WI. I'm going to change that handle because I don't know if I necessarily need my last name in there. And then you can also follow Brent.
Yeah.
Brent, what's your handle? Is it B Strasberg?
B Strasberg. Yeah. I
Um,
I don't care about my last name. I'm over it at this point. It's just it's in my username for everything, so I just don't care anymore.
Well, and I feel like you can be pretty composed, and you don't have to worry about like anything cancelable coming off of. Certainly not from you.
Yeah, that is true. Although you never know, there could be somebody with a weird vendetta against me for some reason, but I feel like I play it pretty straight. So
Well, we'll see. We'll see what your takes are on CM Punk, and that'll probably be the determining factor on if you're going to have people with vendettas against you.
yeah, that's true.
Oh boy, oh boy. I mean, where do we start? I mean, chronologically, it makes sense to review Raw first, but
yeah,
I don't know. I feel like I may need to get this out of my system in this week's AEW Dynamite
I
review.
mean, this probably was the biggest point of contention of the week.
Yeah, there was. I mean, there was a lot of interesting things that happened on WWE as well, but this is the one that had people talking this week. AEW Dynamite. I mean, I suppose it's a matter of perspective, but my perspective is that this is an episode of Dynamite that will live on in infamy. I thought there was a lot of bad choices made on this week's episode of Dynamite, but we could talk about the entire episode. Maybe we'll do that chronologically, but I think for my sanity, we need to get this, all in footage, that whole thing out of the way.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
we're going to probably jump back into the rest of Dynamite, but first things first, let's talk about what everybody else is or has. That is that AEW made the decision, I think last Saturday during WrestleMania, or as it was wrapping up night one, that they were going to air the footage.
Afterwards on Collision, they announced that they were going to show footage, behind the scenes footage of All In.
Yes, the much talked about surveillance footage. It was kind of like the Zapruder tapes of wrestling.
Yeah, and originally when that came out, everybody was just like, there's no way they're going to show that footage. They're going to show something with the Young Bucks and FTR or whatever to set up the feud, because there was a clip of them interacting in the locker room after the show, but that we did see already, but they thought maybe there was going to be something else for that or something along those lines. But then immediately, like, Sean Ross Sapp and Dave Meltzer and all the journalists were like, no, Tony, they reached out to Tony, and basically Tony's like, no, we're going to be showing the footage that you're expecting to see.
Yeah. Conventional wisdom probably told you that this is going to be a swerve, and they're trying to garner heat, but I like it. Thank you. Thank you. Brent's doing his Prince Nana if you're only listening.
Yes, that's true.
But so they did it. They actually showed us the surveillance footage. When I heard what they were going to be doing, I was skeptical that it was going to be much of anything, because surveillance footage in general, it can be hard to really see what's going on, hear what's going on. But do you want to kind of give us a play-by-play of what you saw, Brent?
In the footage?
Yeah, in the footage itself. And I guess if you want to also how the Young Bucks kind of build this up, or how did they introduce
the Young
this?
Bucks came on, and I should really take better notes when I'm watching stuff. The Young Bucks came on.
You're the wrestling guy here.
That's true, but I don't know. I watch it. I don't necessarily memorize everything that happens, because
that's probably healthy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I like to keep it that way. So Young Bucks came on, and basically were like, they kind of teased like, oh yeah, we didn't really think it was a good idea to do this, but at the same time, like this was really devastating for us, and because there was an altercation in the backstage area at All In, and it dealt with FTR's friend, and basically kind of set it up as like FTR maybe set this sort of thing up to create a lot of chaos behind the scenes, so that the Young Bucks would be distracted and have to deal with their EVP duties and have to deal with all the media and all the people asking questions about that, and all of this stuff distracted the Young Bucks in their match against FTR at All In, and that's why they lost that match. So that's kind of how they built up to the footage being shown.
Okay, and then what did we see? I guess I can kind of go over what I saw.
Sure.
This was immediately after the pre-show ended. Jungle Boy Jack Perry had just had a match with Hook. So we see what their version of the gorilla position is. I believe they call it the go position.
Yeah, I'm not even 100% sure that, like, I'm not sure if that's what that area was, or it was just kind of weird. It seemed like a hallway. I don't know if it was.
I imagine it's probably a little bit different than WWE setup. WWE kind of has a entire station that they travel around and set up.
I know what their normal setup is for shows, because they've shown that before, and it doesn't look necessarily like that, but All In is a different beast because they're in a football stadium, not at a wrestling show necessarily, and they might not have the exact same kind of deal happening there.
Look at you calling a soccer stadium a football stadium. You're so cultured. So yeah, we see Jungle Boy is standing in front of this table. You see CM Punk come up, recognizable with the straight edge jacket from behind. There is no audio, so we cannot hear what is being said at first, and pretty much up until the moment of contact, I guess. It really, at first glance, would seem like a civil conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see Jungle Boy kind of look at Punk a few times. He's playing with his hair a lot in this video. It's one of the biggest takeaways there.
It might just be one of those Jack Perry, like that's his like awkward go-to sort of thing. It's just like, I'll just play with my hair, because this is kind of, I'm sure he's probably feeling, I don't think Jack Perry was going in with the intention of being like Punk kind of made him, and this is kind of going into a little bit like where you wanted to go, but I feel like Jack Perry wasn't necessarily super confrontational about it. He just kind of felt like this whole thing was awkward more so than anything. Like I just kind of said that.
I'll tell you what I thought he thought. I think it's a classic case of this generation thinking you can say whatever you want and not having repercussions. So when somebody actually confronts you on something that you said, a lot of people in this day and age don't really know what to do.
Yeah, that's true.
So maybe he truly wasn't expecting that. I don't know. To me, if you blatantly call somebody out like that, I would expect some sort of reaction, particularly in the case of Punk, who has a history
that should be known, especially in that locker room. So.
At this point, yes. But from up until that point, it looked like what Punk told Ariel Helwani, pretty much kind of blow for blow looked like it. That they had some words. Again, we didn't hear what was actually said, so we don't know exactly. But then you see Punk kind of shove Jungle Boy back, who looked completely surprised by this. And then it was kind of hard to see much after that because as Punk was kind of grabbing him into what people call like a front face lock, which is essentially somebody is kind of bent over and you're just kind of holding their head. Bunch of people jumped in, broke it up. Jungle Boy to me looked kind of stunned as he was kind of pulled away. Punk looked like he was yelling at a lot of people. Tony Khan, who is apparently watching all of this unfold directly in front of him, who was sitting at the table right next to where Jungle Boy was standing, or at least that's what I'm told. You can kind of see his hand at one point.
I've heard mixed things about that. Brian Alvarez says that Tony Khan isn't in that footage, and that area was a separate area. That's why I'm thinking maybe there was a different gorilla kind of position, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I've only really heard that from Brian Alvarez. Nobody else has really commented on it. And
I think people were piecing it together because you do see a hand eventually kind of come across into the screen, and then as Punk is being pulled away, he does, I won't even say lunge, but he like kind of sticks his head in that direction and looks like he screams something at somebody.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people assume that was when he called Mr. Khan a clown and told him that he quit.
Yeah.
And then he got pulled away.
Very well could be.
We see Chris Hero put his hands on his head and say, Jesus Christ.
That was the highlight of the
Poor Chris Hero,
I know, right?
Trying to play peacemaker. So yeah, I guess the initial analysis just of the footage itself without editorializing names and people. To me, like I said, it looked very similar to what Punk kind of told Ariel Helwani about how things went. I was a little bit annoyed that obviously everybody knows that, kayfabe is dead and all that, but I don't believe that on television, when you have a TV slot, you should not be blatantly posting things that break kayfabe. So the backstage area is sacred in that manner. And we see Hook, who had just had a match in a, relatively personal feud with Jungle Boy, just kind of sitting there watching it all unfold with this guy he just had a match with. I totally disagree on that premise that, that should not be aired. And then I guess, I don't know, the people that were clutching their pearls about like, oh my God, CM Punk, what a madman. To me, this was a big nothing burger. This was two people having a disagreement. It got a little bit physical, and I don't know. I would say that people that are saying that, oh my God, Punk, what a monster! Like how dare he assault someone at work? I guess I would venture a guess that they've never been in a wrestling locker room, and they probably have never played team sports and been in any locker room because these kind of things happen all the time. I mean, if we're talking about firing people based on things like this, not a lot of people in wrestling or professional sports would have jobs at the moment.
That is very true. Yes, I know. I'm in a couple of like Discord groups and stuff with people that are, independent wrestlers or whatever, and a lot of them have said like, yeah, this happens frequently in those kinds of settings, and it's just like, you just, and it's kind of like what Kenny Omega said in his Twitch stream too. It's just like, you fight it out, and then afterwards, as long as you come to a compromise, it's at the end of the day, it's nothing. Like these sorts of things, these little squabbles happen, and it's just something to work on and work on your relationship with that other party on, and then move forward. And sadly, I think regardless of the fight and the repercussions of it, and technically CM Punk getting fired and everything like that, I mean, at the end of the day, Punk quit. He wasn't going to be showing up to AEW tapings anymore.
No, that was the end.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, you could say, oh, the Punk got fired, Punk, whatever. It doesn't matter. He wasn't going to be working there. Jungle Boy got suspended, but at the same time, I think some of the suspension with that strictly was like, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this character going forward? Because at that point, that character wasn't really working anyway. So it seemed like a convenient use to just suspend him anyways, and then figure out everything else, and then all shakes out. So.
Well, I want to kind of get into, I guess, after that footage, that's pretty much where the footage ends. We see Chris Hero cover his face or walk away with like oh, Jesus kind of look on his face. We cut back. FTR cuts a promo. We'll get into all that. And oddly enough, I think one of the first things they said in their promo was, "What was the point of showing that?"
You're
And I think
right.
that echoed the sentiments of a lot of people watching. Just like,
Yeah.
really, like that's it. And
Right.
it just makes the decision to air it so mind-boggling in so many ways. But we're going to get into that. But I want to kind of break this down piece by piece, who was involved and kind of how I view them afterwards. So the first one is the elephant in the room. To me, with CM Punk, nothing about that video changed my view on him. Before we had this interview with Punk and Helwani, I had pictured this scenario in my head a lot of how could this have happened or what did it look like. And it almost is like somebody took video footage out of my brain and showed it,
Sure.
like a little bit of shoving. He grabbed him. People want to talk about, did he throw a punch at the end? I don't know if it was a punch or if he was trying to what they call pie face somebody, where you just kind of put your hand on their face and
That's kind of what it looked like. It looked like
yeah,
he just got like a pie face shove thing to the face, and
sure. And if we want to talk about this segment, and a lot of times you'll hear people go winners and losers, and that's like how they'll analyze it. To me, CM Punk was the big winner of this entire controversy, the decision to air this. He even posted a Instagram post of the infamous shot of George W. Bush on the aircraft carrier with the mission accomplished. So who knows? Maybe Punk was trying to goad them into posting this footage, because I don't think it really changed the view on many people's eyes. And
no,
if
I
anything,
don't think anybody even going into it was. I don't think anybody was expecting to change their opinion going into it either. I think everybody
sure.
kind of knew what it was going to be. There was probably going to be anything significant that happened, unless there was just blatant lies being told by a lot of people about it.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They put this footage out there. It just, to me, it adds to his lore, about how he is kind of like the master of always keeping his name relevant. So now you have him trending on Twitter for a company that he no longer works for.
Sure.
And I think if anybody did change their mind on Punk, I'd have to think it would be more so people kind of being a little bit more on his side after this. Particularly to me, when you really think about what he's been through trying to set up this meeting to bury the hatchet so they can at least work together with the elite, that not coming to fruition, and then not having a car waiting for him when he got to Heathrow Airport in London. Just probably a frustrating weekend for him. And now, as he's getting ready to go kick off the biggest show in the company's history, he has to deal with this crap. So, on that note, I'll heap some praise on the guy. He still went out there and had a great match with Samoa Joe, despite being in that mindset. I don't know if I would be able to with the adrenaline pumping like that. And he had to be convinced to go out there to have that match with Joe, which is what he stated on Ariel's show, that he essentially did that for Samoa Joe and for Jerry Lynn, who was the agent on the match. And yeah, I don't know. He'll continue to get his name chanted on another company's television show. So kudos to him. But you, Brent, did you of your thoughts on CM Punk change after seeing this footage, or thoughts on the situation? I guess.
On the situation, no. It really didn't. I'm not necessarily as big of a CM Punk fanboy as I used to be, but at the same time, that change happened not because of this footage. This change kind of happened. We could get more into it later at a later point, but and I don't have anything against Phil Brooks or anything. It's just I'm not necessarily as big of a fan as I was of him in WWE as I was in AEW. But I do wish him the best in everything that's going on. But at the same time, if we're talking about winners, I think ultimately all of this, kind of like what I was saying earlier, I think all of this, I think Jack Perry needed a refreshing. And I think his work in New Japan has helped him. His establishing the scapegoat character has kind of worked. And his reaction at New Japan on Friday night in Chicago was extraordinary, both directions. There were people cheering him, there were people booing him. It was a madhouse. But at the end of the day, it was a very CM Punk like reaction for him in that building. because the worst thing you can do is go out there and get no reaction. And he did not get no reaction. He got probably the loudest reaction that he would have gotten at any point in his wrestling career.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You mentioned Jungle Boy. He's who I have next up on my list here as far as let's analyze, how do people look after this? I thought the airing of this footage, the decision to air it by Tony Khan was absolutely brutal for Jack. I think both in kayfabe and in real life. The only way that there was anything positive for him, if for this footage to be aired, would be if, well, actually, Jack got some shots in on Punk and kind of got the better of him, because essentially the biggest star that you had, which is now on another television program, punked out one of your young alleged, up and comers here that you want to build around in real life. Like that'll always be out there now. To me, there's just a lot more to be gained from sitting on this footage and letting people believe what they want to believe and kind of turn it into this, folklore rather than showing the big nothing burger and ruining it. But I think Jungle Boy and this is probably bad advice from people that had a bone to pick, but deciding to say Real Glass, Crimea River, the issues he had with Punk, and doing that, in just before a show started, to me, he played the game that we call fuck around and find out.
Sure.
And he did, both in the wrestling character, the person, Jack Perry, the human being. Yeah, I'm sure he probably lost a lot of respect in many ways, and in some people's eyes, maybe he gained some respect. But to me, there was only downside for him or for AEW airing this as far as Jungle Boy is concerned, that he's just a casualty. And I don't think this furthers him really. I know you were at the New Japan show, and that show, we have to remember, was in Chicago. This was the first appearance after this. Does this do anything for him long term? Remains to be seen. I'm very skeptical that outside of Chicago he'll get much of a reaction. And if he does, it's probably going to be what the Young Bucks are going to continue to get, which is CM Punk chants. And at the end of the day, what does that really do for you?
I don't think they've. Besides the footage being shown, there really hasn't been any CM Punk notable chants on, like, during Dynamite, during Young Bucks segments, anything like that. If there are, they get silenced pretty quickly. But I think ultimately this will further his return to AEW and his probable allegiance with the Young Bucks in the new Elite. And I think this will give him a bigger stepping stone on that show going forward. Does it make him look like a big badass tough guy? No. But at the end of the day, it's professional wrestling. Like, those things are kind of, they're decided in the ring, not behind the scenes. And I think as time goes on, 6 months from now, not a lot of people are they'll remember this, but they're not going to put it in their consideration of, like, well, we can't take Jack Perry seriously because of this. Like, I think I know where you're coming from, but I don't think it's going to be as substantial as you think it's going to be.
Well, here's my biggest issue. Well, if we want to make the argument that, well, his character needed some kind of freshening up, there's no money here. There's no match that he can have with CM Punk. That will never happen. So there's really no way of capitalizing on this now. Like, he'll get his 15 minutes of fame, but he's still, a charisma vacuum. There's nothing there. He can't be taken seriously as a heel. He had a nice little run as a comedy babyface, but if the goal here is to turn Jack Perry into a star, I don't think it's going to be done, especially now. I don't know if it was ever in his future, but now I think this kind of just, to me, puts him 6 feet under as far as being anything more than a footnote on CM Punk's Wikipedia page.
We will certainly see. It'll be a very interesting time to see him come back to AEW, and I don't know if that's going to be as early as Sunday or if it could be postponed for however long. But I think I'm slightly more optimistic about this than you are. But I get where you're coming from, and I could very well be wrong. I have been wrong many
Well,
times in the past.
we mentioned the Young Bucks before. I watched some footage of fans that were in the arena, um, watching the footage live as they played it on their Tron. You could hear this almost like audible confusion as it was being played. Some people were booing before they even started the video.
Yeah.
Once Punk kind of popped into the frame, you could hear CM Punk chants. Um, there was some people that were cheering, and then I heard some CM Punk chants after the footage was aired, along with some booing. But for me, the Young Bucks, again, we talked about the upside. I don't think there was any upside for them here. I had heard conflicting reports that they were either against airing this or for it, depending on who you believe. You gotta
It
love
was,
wrestling journalists.
yeah, it was. People have the official report is that they were okay with showing this. Whoever's it was originally Wade Keller said that they weren't okay with doing that segment, but they were fine with it. They were fine with it because it fueled the storyline for their FTR match.
Well, and you talk about the FTR match. How does this add heat to that match? That's what I'm really, really confused
I
about, because
mean,
that's what I've heard people try to justify it with. Oh, they're, it's part of their characters, and it's building up to their match more. And it's just like, well, how? Because FTR's friends with Punk.
yeah.
Again, if there was a future where, hey, CM Punk could come back and have a feud, and come back to, bring reclaim his name or whatever you want to call it, then maybe. But there's just
It's just going back to they faced FTR at All In. They were distracted. They lost the match. They're down 2-1 to FTR in their battles between the two tag teams right now. So
that's a
was
big
really
stretch.
I
That is
mean,
a bit of a
it
stretch
is.
for me.
It is, but at the end of the day, did they need a storyline for this match? No, because it's the tag team. It's the end of the tag team tournaments, the finals of the tag team tournament. You don't necessarily need any juice on there, but there are people that criticize AEW for, oh, this match doesn't have a storyline. So it's, I guess, something in that regard, but I don't.
One other person we saw in the video, Samoa Joe, I felt so bad for him. I'm glad he was able to get his match with Punk. But thank God he was there to be a boss, because no one else, except for maybe Chris Hero, acted like a boss in that situation. Tony Khan included, which I have a lot to say about Tony. So we'll get into that in a minute. But speaking of Tony, before and after this particularly segment aired, Tony Schiavone was seen on camera, and he looked absolutely embarrassed. This poor man, what they put him through. He lived through WCW in 2000.
Here's the thing with Schiavone. Schiavone has talked about this, and he said he was just playing up to the Young Bucks talking, which is the same reaction that he always has whenever they're going to cut to the Young Bucks, which is absolutely true.
I don't know. It seemed like there's a little bit more there to me. Maybe that's an agree to disagree situation, but it was telling to me when he has a weekly podcast with Conrad Thompson. Shout out to Conrad, the Podfather. Love his work. And he had an opportunity to talk about it. And he kind of was just like, I just want to move on past all this.
Sure.
And you could hear it in his voice that this was not something that he had any interest in drumming up again. And I heard a lot of that when people were asked for their reaction this week, whether it be AEW talent. Just most of it was, I'd rather just move on.
Yeah.
I didn't hear a lot of defending of this segment, and I didn't hear a lot of defending of Tony Khan. So God bless Tony Schiavone if he was feeling it. This poor man, he had to live through WCW 2000, and it's like he's got to watch this fatal car wreck in super slow motion again, but at least the check is still clearing. So do you want to talk about Tony Khan? I want to talk about Tony Khan.
I'll let you talk about Tony Khan, because your perception of him and mine are different, but yeah.
Well, I need to stretch for this one, I think. I'm about to talk for a long time, Brent, and I'm definitely going to give you as much time as you want for rebuttal. Because like you said, this is something that you and I disagree with a lot, is just Tony Khan both the promoter and the human being. But to me, this is just his red nose and his just got bigger. His floppy shoes just got floppier. Uh, as Punk said, it's a clown show when it comes to Tony Khan for me. For me, this was confirmation of what many of us believe about Tony, that he's not a boss. He is living out his cosplay dreams of being a wrestling promoter. And it's disappointing to me because for so many years, we've wanted a contender with something behind it to really approach WWE. And this was our best chance with AEW. Unfortunately, in my eyes, the worst possible person to take the reins and be a leader for that company is who is running that company. He never had like what a young Vince McMahon had, which was wrestling people around him to keep him in check. So Vince had guys like Pat Patterson and Bruce Pritchard who had that familiarity, but also had a spine that were willing to tell him, like, this is really a bad idea, Vince. I'm not saying that didn't change, because that certainly changed as Vince got older and as WWE got more and more successful. But in the golden years or the early days of WWF, he needed that. I don't know if Tony Khan has that, and he certainly does need that. This is also a guy to me that comes off as never in his life having to deal with stress or conflict. And it's just confirmed by the comment of, I feared for my life. If you were around that situation with Punk and Jack Perry and you feared for your life, goddamn, you must have had a pretty nice life if that is what made you the most fearful you've ever been. His best accomplishment to me is just being born into money. And really, another ironic thing, of all the reactions that I've seen, not just in this incident, but just lately when you're talking about AEW kind of going into a tailspin, the only person I've seen really come out by name defend him was Cody Rhodes. Most of the reactions I've seen is just saying, I'd rather just move on. I see Jim Ross is now wistfully posting excerpts from his book on Twitter about how amazing it felt when he returned to WWE. Alvarez is reporting that the majority of their own locker room in AEW was dumbfounded and embarrassed by this decision. But nearly every decision that he does make is driven by ego and stubbornness. And you know, it's fine if you want to have this separate thing from WWE that's completely different, and it's a different choice, and that's fine. But you can totally do that, but you can't turn around then and declare war on WWE and get upset and cry tribalism when somebody criticizes you. This is like a guy that watched the movie Rocky 10 times and then decided, oh, I'm going to buy a boxing ring and challenge Mike Tyson. There's no hope to me for AEW at this point. I'm glad that the old workers, you know, the veterans, have a place to go when maybe there's not a spot for them in WWE. They can go there and take some of Shad's money for as long as Shad Khan allows it to go on. But yeah, there was never upside to showing this, and it was a staggeringly dumb decision now, knowing that it really was just a big nothing burger in the end, but they still went forward with it, and really in the name of what? A tiny ratings bump. People say Tony's a nice guy. I don't know that. I mean, I hear that a lot, but to me, that could also just equate to, yeah, he's a nice guy. He actually just pays me to do whatever the hell I want. And, you know, I don't want to, get too deep into this, but hearing the whole Jericho Kylie Ray situation, the details on that, I don't know that I can flat out say Tony Khan's a nice guy based on what we do know and don't know about that situation. But Tony Khan, he's just somebody, he overpromises, he underdelivers, and that's really the exact opposite of what you need to be doing if you're the number two trying to approach the number one. He's got Sasha Banks, he's got Will Ospreay, he got Okada, and what did that equal? Nothing. We were told these were going to be game changers. I think Okada and Ospreay made the right move by going to AEW. I don't know if WWE is the right place for those two specifically. And in the case of Sasha, I think she was just blinded by the money. I think that was going to be, I don't know. I think it's a questionable decision for her. We can talk more about Sasha, but I really do feel for the talent that is booked to long-term deals with AEW at this point. At least the ones to me that have the potential to be the big stars. You know, your MJFs, your Hook, even guys like Orange Cassidy, the Acclaimed. I hope they can find their way out as fast as possible. And if they have that opportunity, God, I hope they take it, because there's nothing to gain by being the AJ Styles of AEW, just sticking around out of blind loyalty. But for all intents and purposes, AEW did their job of forcing WWE to get their shit together a little bit. But I don't have a reason to take them seriously. They're pushing Billy Gunn and Chris Jericho in the year 2024 and wondering why it's not working and why the ratings continue to fall. I think this is a similar situation to the finger poke of doom back in the day with WCW, where it's probably the ball's already rolling too fast, and this is just kind of like this symbolic, fall of that company. And really, the only chance they have of turning this around is if Tony just turned into the ceremonial check writer. Really, that's who Shad Khan is, but it's likely tarnished too much. If they get some wrestling people in there to, just kind of do a clean break and try something completely different, maybe they have a shot, but they've burned up the goodwill that they had in 2019. Okay, I'm out of breath. Brent, your thoughts?
I totally understand where you're coming from. I think it's all a little much, but at the end of the day, does Tony need to listen to his inner circle a little bit more? Yes. Does he need to split Ring of Honor off and have somebody else just handle that show so he doesn't have to worry about it because it's kind of a train wreck? Yeah.
Or just get rid of it completely.
I don't mind it as a feeder system, as a way of getting reps for guys. Basically, the hope when they bought it was them kind of just doing away with their AEW Dark and their Dark Elevation show and kind of shifting that over to Ring of Honor as a concept, and they've kind of done that. And I think it ultimately does serve some good because they're giving more wrestlers paychecks, and B, they're giving more wrestlers actual work and reps in the ring, especially the younger guys who need them. I think it does have a really good point, a really good concept. It could work. The way that they're doing it isn't working. However, their women's division is extraordinary, and that's where they've really gotten a chance to focus on that and really have gotten to see a lot of good talent come from there. And I think Athena's having one of the best runs, of her career in ROH, but it's going completely under the radar of most people. That being said, yeah, I get where you're coming from with Tony being a money mark and all of that stuff. I get where you're coming from because at the end of the day, the guy, I think the problem is, I don't even know if it's a problem, but the guy loves wrestling. It's no secret that actually a picture that I took of Tony Khan at the New Japan show blew up on Twitter. I had posted in a Discord group I'm in, and somebody posted it on Twitter with a little funny thing, and Tony retweeted it, and it blew up all over the internet. He was there. He was loving the show. He was watching everything. He was there with Renee, probably because Mox was going to win the championship, but there was lots of AEW talent there in the first place, so he'd be there to watch that. I think the dude just loves wrestling, and I think at the end of the day, the wrestling industry is obviously better with AEW in it. I've been at the point many times in the past 5, 6, 7 years where I've just been I can't do WWE anymore. Maybe I'll watch NXT or whatever, but there's been many points where I can't. WWE doesn't really do it for me as a wrestling program. Do I think AEW is perfect? No, absolutely not. But I think AEW delivers more of what I find interesting as a wrestling program, and I think ultimately this footage, this Wednesday aside, I think ultimately Tony Khan is really good for the wrestling business. Do I think it was the right idea to air the footage? No. But I think at the end of the day, AEW is a really good company. Dynasty is next Sunday. It's going to be an amazing pay-per-view. And at the end of the day, I don't really care about behind the scenes drama, this, whatever. Like, I'll read that stuff. But it's at the end of the day, I don't really care about a stupid decision to show some footage. That's not going to ruin my love of a company that has a lot of wrestlers that I enjoy watching work.
I understand that. I do think indirectly that stuff does matter because AEW's television contract is coming up. Are they going to be able to stay with the Turner Network? I don't know.
I mean, Tony seems pretty confident that they will. I mean, obviously anything can change at any given point, but
to me, it's just a shame that, you know, whether you love AEW, you hate it, they could have taken that goodwill that they had just handed to them in 2019. Just by virtue of being legit and being not WWE. There's been so many bad decisions in the last 5 years, sprinkled in with some really awesome stuff. Tony Khan's never done this before. Maybe he needs to grow into this. But from what we've seen, I am just not sure he's capable of being a businessman when it comes to wrestling and not just using this as his personal playground and taking everything personally and doing everything out of emotion. And this is just a microcosm of what Tony, thinks wrestling should be, or, if somebody criticizes him, how he should handle that. I think we'll probably have to leave this as an agree to disagree.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm rooting for AEW from the standpoint of, as you said, having AEW in the wrestling world is good for, what's the old cliche, something about the tide making, whatever. Long story short, it's better for WWE to have AEW around.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I worry about AEW not being around if Tony Khan continues to run things the way that he has.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, obviously the thing that killed WCW was not having a TV deal, and the thing that killed ECW is not having a TV deal. So as long as he has that, it'll be okay. If he loses that, it'll be a little dicier. That being said, ratings haven't been phenomenal, but they're still third best for cable ratings on Wednesday nights behind the NBA, which is a good spot for a wrestling show to be in.
But there is the old adage, if you're not growing, you're dying. And AEW is not only not growing, it seems like for a long time they kind of were here, just that the people that were AEW people that's just they were very, very steady, and now it's just kind of like we're getting this slow trickle.
It kind of is, but so there's one guy in the Fightful Discord who kind of dissects the ratings and has dissected them year after year and has compared that the drop off based on cable subscribers dropping off and everything. And actually AEW has stayed a little bit more steady than people think, because the number has dropped, but based on all of the metrics and all of the other shows and how the ratios are working out, it's actually stayed about equal. That being said, WWE's numbers obviously gone up in that time, and that makes it look worse for AEW because WWE's been able to grow their audience where AEW hasn't been. But
well, if you want a good podcast to listen to, and a recent episode of Wise Decisions, which is hosted by Eric Bischoff, another area that him and his guest, who was an expert on social media and YouTube viewers, that's one place where AEW is really, really struggling as well. So hopefully they can pull the nose up on this thing, because as critical as I've been, the last thing we want is for AEW to go under.
Right, absolutely.
Um, do you think this is the last we hear of CM Punk on AEW television, either directly or indirectly?
I mean, I think when Jack Perry comes back, there may be a little bit of maybe something there, but I don't think they're going to say his name or reference him directly. I think there could be homages to it potentially, but I don't know for sure. That would be really the only thing. After that, I think they're done, and they might even not go back to that when Jack Perry shows up, depending, because I'm sure they, based on this past week, I think there's probably a little bit less. They probably feel a little less confident about doing that and going back and
Well, if they haven't learned their lesson now, I really
right.
don't know what would get them to change their minds. I do want to mention one person that I talked about. This whole experience has kind of reinforced things that I've already believed. The one person that I didn't mention that, as more and more of this stuff has come out and now the reactions have come out, that's Kenny Omega. My thought process on Kenny Omega has been he's not really my thing in the ring, but he seems like a good dude.
Sure.
And based off of his reactions, and he talked a little bit this week while he was streaming about the reactions to this and his relationship with CM Punk. It seems like he may be the only one in this entire situation that was somewhat level-headed. He talked about how he doesn't feel like he has a bad relationship with Punk, that it's probably professional, and that if there is beef, it's not from his side. Um, to me, and it sounded to me a little bit from because I saw some of the clips of him from his live stream. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe he's trying to plant the seeds of maybe I do need to get out of here and try this WWE thing at some point. I don't know. He's very,
Yeah.
very complimentary of WWE, of WrestleMania. Again, his relationship with Punk, all that stuff. So whether or not he eventually ends up there, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he was like starting to plant some seeds here.
Yeah, I don't know. Some of that could have been too that storyline wise for AEW, the Young Bucks did fire him from the Elite as well. So that does kind of
A little bit
further.
of working going on there.
Yeah, there could have been a little bit of that as well in there.
Gotcha. Well, we're going to circle back to AEW Dynamite. Let's talk about the Raw after WrestleMania. This used to be the best show of the year. The quality's kind of taken a nosedive, and
Yeah.
I don't know if it's so much that it's not a good show anymore. Maybe it's just more that Raw after Mania was built up to such a thing, and now that's just a different show than it used to be. That we want to see those big returns. We want all the new storylines to happen, but it's different now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think back in the day it was easier to be like, hey, we're gonna, bring back this random guy or whatever. And now with everything going on, it's just a little bit harder to make it a bigger spectacle. That they can't just bring on a big name guy because pretty much everybody's got a contract these days. Like you can't. It's
That's
really
true.
difficult to just bring a Brock Lesnar back because you know.
Well, we know.
Well, yes, but or
Goddamn,
whatever.
pal.
Right. There's nobody that's like, oh, who's the big free agent right now? Like
True. I guess if I really think about it, that kind of tracks. If you think of AEW starting up in 2019, that kind of tracks as far as the timeline.
yeah,
There's just
right,
not as many people under contract or guys that you can bring in for those spots. But
right. Like, I
the
think
show,
yeah, the big thing was the big guy showing up was on SmackDown, which I'm sure we'll get to. But even that's at the end of the day, that's not very exciting. So
depending on who you ask, right?
yeah, I mean, I don't know very many people that are excited about it, but whatever.
Well, Monday Night Raw kicked off with Triple H coming out and essentially kind of cutting a similar promo that I saw him. I think he did like a podcast or so. It was some sort of interview, but just basically praising Cody Rhodes. It's funny to me because this wasn't intentional, but the irony of the game opening Raw. and a segment that had nothing to do with him.
Right.
But he introduces Cody. Cody comes out and kind of cuts a babyface cookie cutter promo about, he did it, the story, blah, blah, blah. And we got an appearance by The Rock, probably the last appearance by The Rock that we're going to see for a long time. This segment was very interesting to me. I could have done without Triple H. I think it just kind of slowed everything down. But The Rock and Cody had a very different and awkwardly interesting exchange where they're holding each other's title belts. But The Rock, just his cadence
"This is awkward"
different.
chant was phenomenal.
Yes, and I saw a lot of people shitting on this segment, and I loved it because this was different, and this was, to me, The Rock showing that he is on another level when it comes to character work. Now, I'm sure a lot of it has to do with him conquering Hollywood and becoming a legitimate actor, but I loved this look at a villain that was different, and it wasn't him angry and laughing in the distance, I'll be back and blah blah blah.
Right.
It came off as he had something on Cody. He got into Cody's head and he told him, I'm going to be going away for a while, but when I come back, I'm coming for you. And again, it was the way that he said it, the cadence that he said it. It was so calm and calculated. Cody looked shook. The Rock handed something to Cody that people were immediately speculating on what this could be. I think I texted you that how amazing would it be if he handed him MJF's diamond ring? Right. That would have been amazing. Clearly, we're in fantasy land there, but I think it was a great cliffhanger to set up their eventual match, which is great because that by the time WrestleMania rolled around, it felt like that's what people wanted. They really were kind of over Cody and Roman, and they wanted Cody and The Rock. So in many ways, it felt this WrestleMania season that the buildup was to Cody and The Rock. So this just confirms to me that, yes, we're eventually going to get it. Is that SummerSlam? Is that Royal Rumble? Is that WrestleMania next year? We don't know, but I came away excited to see these two go one-on-one.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I think that'll be, I don't know if it'll be a great match, but it'll be a great spectacle. And that's ultimately, that it'll be a great rivalry when The Rock gets back on screen, because The Rock can just talk for 20 minutes on Instagram and make it be the most captivating thing that week.
God, he's amazing at those.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing that encounter actually come back around again.
Well, and one thing that it reminded me of too is you just kind of take a step back every now and then, and you have to like kind of slap yourself and go, how fucking cool is this? Like, it's The Rock. And like,
right.
I never thought we'd see The Rock in any kind of semi-regular role on WWE again.
Absolutely not. I thought maybe he'd show up. I thought maybe they would do the Roman match at some point, but that would be a half-assed effort by The Rock, and he'd probably tear half of his muscles in his body and never come back again. But like, clearly he came back motivated. He worked his ass off to get in shape for that match.
Yeah, I thought he looked good.
He looked fine. Yeah.
And like, to not only hit that, holy shit, we have The Rock, but we have the best Rock. We don't have the weird, mashup John Cena, Hulk Hogan Rock.
Right.
Like, this is The Rock doing his stuff, doing his heel work. And Cody, I think he doesn't need a long title run here. Maybe we'll see The Rock eventually cost him that title. But it's nice to have that thing kind of in the back of his mind. So if something does happen down the line, that can kind of be your out of, he was waiting for the eventual shoe to drop with Rock. So good long-term storytelling. Not enough of that is done in wrestling. We have plenty of long-term storytelling, but not necessarily good long-term storytelling in wrestling. So I like what this is setting up. After that segment, we had Ilya Dragunov, the NXT champion, versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Dragunov making his main roster debut. They do have the draft coming up soon. So this was just kind of like, we saw this a little bit later with Roxanne Perez as well. Just kind of like hey, check this person out. This is, you expect more of this. I thought it was kind of a fitting choice to have him going against Shinsuke because, and maybe you disagree with me, Brent. I think his future is very much similar to Shinsuke's like current predicament, where I kind of just see him as somebody that he can have good matches. He's never necessarily going to be near the top of the card. Maybe he'll hit some mid card titles, but I don't see a super bright future for Dragunov on the main roster. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. I see him as like an there's a lot of talk like oh he's gonna be like Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship, maybe a year from now he'll kind of be that guy. But yeah, I don't really see him transcending to like the main event is of WrestleMania is Ilya Dragunov in it. Like I don't really see him as that guy. He's
I
a great
saw
worker, but he's not a guy that you can build your company around.
a funny comment that I saw was that Dragunov is like if you put Gunther in the dryer for too long.
Sure.
I like that.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
So Dragunov gets the win. Naturally, with the main roster debut, you're not going to have him start off with a loss unless you're Killer Cross or Cross.
Right.
So after that, we got a promo with the Judgment Day. As we all know, Damian Priest cashed in Money in the Bank, and he is now the World Heavyweight Champion. I was disappointed with this. The hope for me was that once he cashed in, now we can like get the Judgment Day to something more legitimate again. And while I laughed my ass off when they all held up their titles and then R-Truth just popped in the frame holding up the World Tag Team Championship, part of me was hoping like, okay, that story's over. Let's kind of move that to the wayside. And I thought we'd see or hope we would see something new and fresh with the Judgment Day. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's what they're going to be. I mean, the World Heavyweight Championship is going to be continue to just be a secondary title, it seems. And I'm not super amped to see it in comedy spots with R-Truth. Eventually, what we got out of this was The Miz and R-Truth and their Invisible Man partner in a 6-man tag team match against Dominic, JD, and Finn. John Cena came out. Always fun to see John. I love John Cena. That's somebody that's made a miraculous turnaround to me. Somebody I couldn't stand. And one day I just woke up and realized that there's nothing to not love about the guy. But they pick up the win on triple attitude adjustments. Again, this was it was more of a segment than an actual match.
Yeah.
And I don't think this really did anything to further Priest or make us take him seriously as a world champion.
Nope, not at all. It just kind of was a way to get John Cena on the card and have him be part of a match for a very small period of time. And just, yeah.
Well, and props to Damian Priest. I learned a little bit more about him after winning the title, and I didn't realize that 10 years ago he was homeless and, trying to make things work. And it's always cool to see somebody that's a little bit older break into wrestling a little bit later and still get to that mountaintop. At the end of the day, I just kind of makes me believe that he's going to be that transitional champion and that McIntyre probably wins it from him at Clash of the Castle. But I don't know, maybe something will change between now and then. We next segment we got was Roxanne Perez, as I mentioned earlier, making her main roster debut, beating Indy Hartwell, continuing this slow burn of trying to get Indy and Candice LeRae to turn heels, which I don't mind that. I think the women's tag team division needs more character development and more reasons and more teams, I guess, that actually feel like teams and not just, hey, here's 2 female talents we're not using. So it's something. And Perez, she looked fine in the match. I don't know much about her other than I believe she's super young, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, she's like 21, I think now.
Yeah, so good on her for getting it to that level. We'll see what I know. You probably watch a little bit more NXT than I do, Brent. What could you describe Roxanne Perez's character as?
Well, her character kind of just was I'm really good at wrestling at a really young age person for a while there. And now recently she's actually kind of got a little bit something more, but it's still not much. But now she's like I got screwed over because her title reign originally ended because of an injury, her first title reign, and now she's just kind of been having a vendetta against basically everyone in the women's division. But where am I trying to go with this? Basically, she's just like, all right, now it's my turn, it's my show, it's my company, it's my championship. I need to win this. So I mean, there's really not like as far as NXT characters go, hers is probably the most grounded. She's not like a surfer person or something like that, or a business lady like a lot of the NXT characters are there. But yeah, I mean, she's at the end of the day, she's just really good at wrestling, and she is.
Not the worst thing in the world, and I think she does have kind of a unique look. A little bit on the smaller side, but
Yeah, she is
they have
very
enough
small.
giants.
Right. She's
Uh,
very small, and that is kind of the issue. Is you have a Roxanne Perez standing across the ring from a Rhea Ripley, and it's just like you kind of lose a little bit of your wrestling as realness there because
sure.
there is just such a dramatic difference in size. But
I should mention we also had a segment where Liv Morgan attacked Rhea Ripley backstage. I'm not a huge Liv Morgan fan, but I love the segment. It makes sense to me. This is somebody that was gone for a long time. So in storyline, it would make sense that when she finally does come back, that should be the woman that she's targeting.
yeah, and
And
she blames Rhea Ripley for being out, and yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, Liv wanted that WrestleMania match, but didn't get it. So
sure, simple booking and it makes sense.
right.
After that, we got a segment with Sami Zayn and Chad Gable in a tag match versus Imperium. Ludwig Kaiser came out and cut an awful promo on Sami Zayn that felt like a 2018 WWE promo.
Yeah.
Chad Gable joined in, and they so far not a lot of tension with him and Sami Zayn. I mean, it seems like it's going to be a bit more of a slow burn before those two eventually have like the blood feud. They're going to have a match, I believe, next week
Yes.
or this week.
Yes.
So that'll probably be like the beginning. I don't think they're going to go for the full on Chad Gable heel turn quite yet.
No.
I think we'll probably see him lose in a tightly contested match, and that'll kind of be like the first step. And I like booking like that, where you don't just get hit right away over the head with it, especially since Sammy getting into the IC championship title match with Gunther was kind of a late addition anyways. So you don't want to just like give us all the booking at once.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and I think I think it's pretty obvious where this is going, and I think it's going to go in a good direction, and I think it's going to go slowly, and it'll work out as long as at the end of the day they do the right thing by Chad Gable and give him the belt. But I think he, as long as he earns it by doing a good job with the rest of this stuff to build up to that.
Yeah, and if you are into wrestling, the wrestling part of wrestling, you couldn't ask for a much better feud, I think, than Sami Zayn and
Oh
Chad
no,
Gable.
yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Those two will do magic in the ring, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing if Gable can pull off that Kurt Angle-esque just wrestling machine, ruthless, just vicious kind of like I think I compared it to like a mix between a Benoit and a Kurt Angle, where you're just this scrappy, smaller guy, but just he's a ball of muscle and the intensity is there and he's strong as an ox. So a lot of potential in the future of Chad Gable as a heel in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Gable's done a great job with everything that's been given to him. Even the terrible Shorty G character, he still
Oh,
kind of
why'd you
made.
have to go there?
He still made that work the best that he could.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody could have made that work, but
And
you're right. What
and the
more could he have done?
fans have stuck with him, which is a rare thing in wrestling, where most people wanted better for him and stuck around with him and have been behind him this entire time. And I think I think that'll make the awkward Chad Gable turns heel. Oh, I did it because you people weren't supporting me, because like they don't need to go that direction with the heel turn, because I think if anything the people have been overly supportive of Chad Gable. I mean, it's still properly it's earned, but I think he hasn't lost any fans or anything like that. Like there's no reason to blame the fans if that's where they're going to go with this, like they do with 95% of heel turns.
Oh yeah, you don't respect me,
Right. Like that
Get
is the
old.
complete opposite in Chad Gable's case, but we'll see.
Right. We saw Jade Cargill have a match with, a match, I should put that in quotation marks, with Chelsea Green. Chelsea was mouthing off to, who was it, Pierce backstage. And this was like a punishment given to Green. So it was a old school squash match, even less than that. It was really like 2 moves, if I remember correctly.
Basically.
I mean, I don't really have anything to say. It was nothing, and then we'll get to it in the SmackDown review that they kind of repeated this spot. So
Right.
maybe it was a time issue, but I imagine it couldn't have been much more than just a Jade squashes you anyway. So
Yeah, that was the plan. It was originally on the Raw card, and then it got actually switched from like I think it was supposed to be after the Rock Cody segment originally, and then it got moved back later in the show. But either way, I think the entire point of this was to be what it was.
For the main event, we had a fatal 4-way for the #1 contender at the World Heavyweight Championship. I was a little surprised that they just immediately went to, all right, who's the next guy, just right away, and that it wasn't more of a story.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of that is because Backlash is coming up pretty quickly, so they don't really have a lot of time to build something.
Yeah, nothing organic really.
Right.
And sometimes that is just what wrestling is. You have to, we need a match, so go figure it out, go make it happen.
Right.
But we had Drew McIntyre, Jey Uso, Ricochet, and who's the last guy?
Bronson Reed.
Big Bronson Reed.
Yeah.
He's big. Don't forget that.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
Big Bearcat Reed.
I hate the nickname, so
It does seem just a little unnecessary. I mean, you
Right.
can look at the guy and surmise that he's a large fellow, but
Yes.
we see Jey Uso come out on top. It looked like McIntyre had the match won. Our friend CM Punk gets involved again. I was a little bit, I don't know, I had mixed feelings about Punk's involvement here. I wouldn't have minded if it was McIntyre's ego or pride that got in the way, but Punk directly interfering in the match, I thought didn't really help him or didn't seem necessary.
Yeah.
Naturally, it keeps the program with him and Drew McIntyre going, which I think has a lot of meat on that bone. That's going to be fun once Punk is healthy to get those two to finally go at it. But Jey Uso picks up the victory. He's incredibly over with this crowd right now, so I guess that's not really a loss there. But I don't see him as being a world heavyweight champion, certainly not right now, coming off that kind of stinker that he had at WrestleMania with his brother. But this is just
3/4 of a star match, according to Dave Meltzer.
Is that what he gave it? 3/4 of a star?
3/4 of a star.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that low, but it just
certainly
it didn't deliver. I thought those two would have a good match.
Yeah.
But to me, this is just okay. Jey, you're the first sacrificial lamb. We got to get Priest a couple wins, so it looks a little bit better when McIntyre eventually gets that championship. So, it'll be fine. Jey Uso, he's performed in main events, hence the nickname before. And like I said, it at least on the night of Backlash, that's something that the crowd will be into. There'll be some heat in that match because everybody loves Jey.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. Jey is very, very over with the fans, and that gets Damian Priest to be the guy that's rooted against, which is what they need him to be in that match. And ultimately, Damian Priest is going to, retain the title, and it'll be not a huge moment, but it's a match on the card, and they need to get that title, some defenses on there, and it serves a purpose, but it's not going to be anything, a big picture rivalry or anything like that.
So that was WWE Raw. Let's just go chronological. We talked about the infamous Dynamite segment, but I do want to talk a little bit about the rest of the show. One of the things that doing this podcast is going to do for me is get me to watch AEW a little bit more. So, Brent, I got into AEW pretty well, and after the whole Punk fiasco, I kind of bowed out a little bit. So I tuned in this week until that segment, and after that segment, I turned it off. So I may need your help on some of the recaps here.
Oh, okay.
But the show started off. We had Adam Copeland versus Penta El Zero. And I thought that this was a great match.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Edge, this was a throwback. He looked like he did in 2008. Maybe not that far, but having a guy like Penta to work with, I mean, this guy can bump his ass off. He has great facials, even with the mask on. He knows how to sell. And I do feel bad for Penta a little bit because I think he's capable of more with the proper push. But as of now, he's just kind of like the guy that we need you to go out there, have good matches, and then take the pin.
Yeah, that's a fair take on Penta. He's always a credible contender for any spot that you need him to be in. He's kind of like, I don't want to say they're Jey Uso, but he's kind of just in that, maybe a little bit more elevated than Jey Uso because he's been around for a while longer as a singles guy. But I mean, he could be in a singles, he can be in a tag team with his brother, he can be in a trios match.
Obviously, a unique look as well.
Yeah, probably one of the coolest looks in professional wrestling. Just his entire getup is amazing, and
there's not many guys that you can say that legitimately look scary. Like that's a scary looking dude. You know,
right.
But yeah, so Copeland gets the win with a spear. In a good match. I watched this match. I really, really enjoyed it. And I'm like, okay, AEW, let's go. At the end of the match, we had some shenanigans with House of Black. Julia Hart came out after the lights came on or went out. Brody King attacks. Willow comes out to make the save. So I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, they're going to set up a mixed tag match with Willow and Copeland versus King and Julia.
Yep, on Dynamite this week. That is set.
Interesting. Of course, we had the segment that we already talked about. The only thing, I guess, if you wanted to add anything, Brent, your thoughts on the promo that FTR cut after the footage was aired.
I mean, I thought FTR did a great job. They brought.
They tried.
Yeah, they did what they needed to do out of that. They set up the match, and I like listening to those guys talk. Sometimes it feels like they're saying a lot of nothing though at the same time. Like there's really not.
It's one of those deals where if you've heard it once, you've probably heard it 100 times.
And at the end of the day, they're wrestlers. They're not sports entertainers, and they. That's kind of what their entire point of that was. Like, hey, let's just do away with this malarkey. Let's have a good match at the pay-per-view, and it was good for what it needed to be at that point. And I think they're trying to, they tried to divert the attention away from all of the stuff that the Young Bucks or whatever are pushing it towards. And yeah.
After that, we have to talk about this promo. Will Ospreay was on the stage with Renee, and good God, this is such a microcosm of what I talked about with Tony Khan as a boss. Ospreay comes out, and okay, if you're not like a crazy wrestling fan, you wouldn't know this anyways, but Triple H did a podcast and alluded to Will Ospreay, never named him, and kind of talked about Ospreay choosing AEW over WWE, saying that if people that don't want the grind, that he doesn't want them in that case, or that he's happy that he didn't end up with them because Ospreay picked the lighter schedule and blah, blah, blah. Again, never mentioned him by name. I don't think he got super personal with it. It was just a question that he was asked. And, maybe Trips does hold a little bit of ill will there for like, really, we were going to give you the world kind of thing. Ospreay felt the need to directly address this, a segment that probably a good majority of the audience doesn't even know what he's referencing, and mentioned specifically that you talk about the grind. The only reason you're in the position you're in is because you were grinding the boss's daughter. I'm going to try, Brent. I really am. This is supposed to be the guy, right? This is supposed to be the big star that's going to, carry the flag. First things first, he looks like some guy you would see in Walmart at 2 a.m. in this just nasty looking $10 sweatsuit, like he just rolled out of bed. If you're going to be the guy, I need to see that you're going to present yourself as the guy. Like I can look at MJF and say, "Oh yeah, that guy's somebody." He carries himself a certain manner. Osprey, the line about grinding the boss's daughter, like I'm sure that killed on Tony's message board in 2002. But I mean, it's besides the fact that it was just gross the way that he said it. He did like a grinding motion next to Renee, who looked really, really uncomfortable. Like that's the best you got. If you're gonna go that route, at least do something original, do something funny. And then, you know, I hear later on that Tony gave him the okay. Yeah, go ahead, go do this on TV. And again, a smart boss would say, look, I know maybe you're young, you feel like you have to respond. Don't do it on television. You don't need to directly respond. And you don't need to do it in a lowbrow, classless way that you did. I felt bad for Renee. Like I said, she looked uncomfortable. This guy's talking about probably two of her friends, and she wasn't able to respond. And you have a match coming up that supposedly is this dream match that everybody's been wanting forever. That why not just talk about that? Why not build yourself up? Why not take Triple H's criticism and take it to heart and prove him wrong, rather than showing that you're no better than the internet nerds that sit there and prop you up? I mean, you're a great athlete. You're a great acrobat. That's where it ends for me with Will Ospreay. He's young. He's got a long way to go. He can still develop in many, many ways. This was just disappointing to me that this is all you got. And you felt the need to respond on television. And the timing coming right after the CM Punk stuff was just like, Jesus Christ, you guys, like, enough with the internet bullshit. Do you have any thoughts on the Will Ospreay promo?
I mean, honestly, I really haven't given it much of a second thought. I don't know. I think I will say this about Will Ospreay. I think one of the biggest concerns uh, with him coming into AEW was how he would adapt to like doing interviews and all that stuff. And I feel like take the content away, I feel like his delivery and everything has been much better than what people were expecting from him. Because he kind of was just a mumbly guy who would say things, and he's very. I'm not sure where in England he's from, but he's very that region of England, and he's
Thick accent.
yeah. There's like they were saying. There's a few like AEW. The AEW locker room is great because you can learn English, you can learn Japanese, you can learn Spanish, and you can learn Osprey. And I feel like that. I feel like he's done a better job with promos and doing all of that stuff than he was expected to. Just coming in, and he's adapted to that part more quickly and has been more charismatic than people were giving him credit for. Content of the promo aside, you know, when it comes to the content of the promo, it was. Did he need to do that? No. Do I get why he was upset with it? Kinda, yeah. But did it need to be said? I don't really think so. I think we're kind of. I think the point. I think the taking shots at WWE part was already done at that point. I don't think it needed to be done. I actually missed it even the first time around because I was just coming back from my kid at a Cub Scout meeting. And I was just coming back from that. I missed like that part of the promo when I caught the second part, and then everybody was talking about that first part, and I was just like, "Oh, that was a really good promo." And then nobody talked about the rest of it, setting up, talking about how he's been, unfairly criticized and how everybody how younger men have tried to take down the aerial assassin and they failed, and now like basically kind of alluding to Daniel Bryan's, a legend, and now it's his time to kind of take down the legend that is Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, sorry, and take him
You
down.
could say Daniel Bryan. I'm cool with it.
It's so ingrained in me from like years of saying that it's hard. It's a hard transition to make, and it's the same thing just backwards, so it makes it hard. But anyways, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really. obviously they needed to do some segment for that match because everybody's like, oh, what's the story for this match? And yeah, there's not really much of one. At the end of the day, it is just a dream match, but it's one that I really want to see and I'm looking forward to. So,
Well, and that's what's such a shame to me is that you imagine that this match is going to be bonkers, and there's so much positivity. That could have been a way for AEW to just like, let's put this shit behind us and let's show off what we got. And for a company that's been criticized for the way they handle their women, we the other thing is that, you want to criticize Triple H. There's so many ways you could have gone with tons of things about Trips. But to bring Stephanie McMahon into it was just wrong in my eyes. She's an innocent bystander in all this. And it's, again, build on what you have. Stop responding. You want to respond, do it on Twitter, do it in a podcast. And for the love of God, if you're going to directly respond, make it original. The whole joke about Triple H and the boss's daughter, like how many times have we heard this? For somebody that's supposed to be the guy, this is not how the guy should act. And if he had a leader in position to stop him and say, you know what, I love the promo, let's cut that part out, we can go with something different. But I don't see Tony as being the guy to actually step up and do that. And Tony, being the internet nerd that he is probably like, oh yeah, that's a great line. I don't know. It's
I don't know for sure, but I wish they wouldn't have done that line, but I do appreciate Ospreay sticking up for himself. I think he could have done that without going to like, I'm going to insult him, because Will Ospreay does work very, very hard, and he has spent a lot of time flying all over the place, doing everything, flying in from England for all of these. He flew from England for a 4-minute promo on Dynamite. Like, at the end of the day,
and that's what he could have highlighted. Right. That's what he should have talked about, and he did. No, but I
agree. And but yeah, I mean, the dude works hard. He wrestles a lot. He wrestles good matches. He wrestles long matches. He does grind. It's just, I don't know why necessarily. I don't know. I don't know why he thought that was a good shot, or why he thought that was a good decision. If Tony cleared that, I'm sure he probably did. I don't know for sure. Yeah, I don't know. There. Let's just say there's a lot of people, for everything that you can say good about Will Ospreay. A lot of people have said he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, and I think that was kind of one of those moments where you see, like, yeah, Will Ospreay kind of does have poor judgment, and yeah, there probably should have been somebody there that said, yeah, don't do that, Will, or change this, or get your point across differently, and there wasn't. And I don't know, maybe that was just a Will decision. Maybe he didn't run that by anybody. Who knows? I don't know for sure.
Yeah, and it's the other thing is just, you never want to burn a bridge. And you can say a lot of things about a lot of people in the wrestling business that can be construed as business. Maybe one day you have the opportunity to go over there, but if you bring somebody's family into things, that's a good way to fully burn a bridge. But
yeah, well, I think some of that might have been Ospreay taking offense to it, because I know that he's brought up to everybody with his current family situation with his girlfriend, wife, whatever she is, and her kid, and her husband, her ex-husband, or she's a widow now. Her husband committed suicide a few years ago, and he's made emphasis on, like, I want to live in England because that's where her family is, where their circle of support is, and that's a big part of his contract decision of staying in England, or of signing with an American company, was his ability to live in England and fly in for tapings to do that. And I don't know if there was part of that just struck a nerve for him, and then he felt that was his way of getting past that. I don't know, but
checks and balances.
Yeah.
All right. That's where I kind of stopped watching. So you might have to. I don't know if you watched the whole episode, but I see.
Did I pulled up a recap just because I didn't take notes. I don't really remember.
Sure,
But I
we had
over it.
Hook, Lionheart, Chris Jericho, and Shibata taking on something called Shane Taylor Promotions. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I personally I love Shane Taylor. He's not the most uh gifted big man in the world. He's a former boxing guy who became a pro wrestler, started a tag team with Keith Lee back in the day, and then they kind of both went their different directions, and they've kind of circled back on that in ROH programming. But I think Shane Taylor is immensely talented as a professional wrestler. He kind of teamed together with Lee Moriarty a few years ago to kind of Shane Taylor Promotions was a Ring of Honor faction for a while. The other guys went their own separate ways after ROH dissolved, essentially. Lee Moriarty joined it, and now they have a new member with Anthony Ogogo joining it last week as well. And this is kind of their way of bringing Anthony Ogogo back to the company, who he's been working really hard in England for pro and getting back and becoming a credible wrestler after probably the worst feud in AEW history, his feud with Cody Rhodes. And
That's where I knew that name from.
Yep. And yeah, the match was good. It wasn't anything, to write home about. At the end of the day, Lee Moriarty got a win over Shibata, which was kind of a big deal because, I mean, at the end of the day, Shibata, he might not be a household Japanese wrestling name, but he is well known in that community as being really, his wrestling gimmick is the wrestler. Like, he is a very good technical wrestler, and Lee Moriarty is a very good up and coming technical wrestler, and that led to their match then again on Collision, which was a really good match as well. But as for this match, it was to set up that feud, but then also this Jericho Hook nonsense that's going on. So.
Yeah, there was some news about Hook this week that supposedly he is going to keep his options open once his contract with AEW expires, which to me tells me, hey, WWE, give me some money. I'd heard a rumor, I don't know, a few months ago that Taz supposedly really wants him to go to WWE, Taz being his father. He does need a lot of work, Hook, but
Yeah.
I will say for the kid, he has a presence. The promos, I mean, there hasn't been much promo work with him. They're getting him a little bit more work, but to me, if the idea for AEW is you want to keep this guy around, I'm not so sure a feud with Jericho is the way to really, really win him over.
I don't disagree. I don't think a feud with Jericho really does much good for anybody. It's kind of like we don't have something for you, so here's Chris Jericho, and it's kind of Jericho is like, oh, I'm gonna work with this guy and I'm gonna make him better, and I don't know if that necessarily always works or not. But I mean, Jericho's a legend in the business, but at this point, it's just like it feels like he should step away, but just kind of refuses to. And I don't know.
Terry Funk of his time.
Yeah, and I don't really have much else to say about that.
Probably the less said about Jericho at this point, the better. We saw a squash match with Okada versus a local jobber. Quick beatdown. Obviously, Okada picks up the win. Accepted PAC's challenge for a match at Dynasty. So I'm not super familiar with a ton of Okada's work, but I am familiar with PAC, and I assume that should be a banger of a match.
Oh, yeah.
There was a little fracas with the Young Bucks and FTR involved, and the Young Bucks and Okada stood tall at the end of this thing. Then we get to the next ratings ploy that they tried. We had the Tony Storm segment. It was a champagne toast. Her and Thunder Rosa got involved. Mariah May got involved. It seemed really, really, I mean, I saw a recap of this. Really, really like bizarrely like paced out this segment. Mariah May had a match with Anna Jay, and everything just kind of like flowed one into the other. but now we're seeing Tony Storm is kissing women and rubbing herself all over women, and I'm just like, do we really? Is this 99? Like, what are we doing here? I think Tony Storm is interesting enough. I really, really love her timeless character. I don't think she needs to be doing this lesbian pollen stuff. We don't need HLA in the year 2024. So whatever. Mariah May defeats Anna Jay, and I don't know. Maybe the Tony Storm stuff is just getting old, and I'm not realizing it. I kind of want to hold on to it because I think it's a tremendous gimmick. I think it's so different than what we've seen. I can't think of another gimmick like it. But yeah, I guess Deonna Purrazzo came out, which I for somehow I missed that. So they're building up tension between her and Thunder Rosa. You kind of have these four women that all have this tension that's building.
Yeah, I don't I don't really have much to say about it. I think Tony Storm's character is tremendous. I don't know how her title reigns don't really seem to translate into much of anything, but I think at the end of the day they're planting the seeds with the inevitable split between her and Mariah May, but then they worked Mina Shirakawa in there as well, which is probably going to set up for a Forbidden Door match between Mina Shirakawa and Tony Storm, where Mariah May is probably going to have to make like the decision of do I go with this person that I've idolized and want to be with, or like that I've came to AEW to be with, but at the same time, like Mina Shirakawa was from her past, and they were tag team partners in Stardom, and do I want to explore this friendship or this friendship, and then there's kissing and canoodling about, and some of it doesn't really. I don't know what they're thinking or where they're going with it, but I think. At the end of the day, they're working in a lot of women in their roster. I think they're going to do some Thunder Rosa, Deonna Purrazzo matches out of this, and build to that match at Forbidden Door. And I guess we'll see where it goes. Could they stop doing the kissing part? I mean, maybe, but at the same time, like some of it, like the kiss between Mariah May and Mina Shirakawa didn't seem like, gratuitous girls kissing just for girls kissing sake. It seemed like they were just legit friends kissing, which is weird, but I mean, it happens, I guess, but I don't know.
I gotta find me some friends like that.
I mean, come on over, big boy. No, I'm just kidding. But
Got a time.
Yeah, anyways, I don't know. We'll see. Was it the cleanest segment in AEW history? No, but I don't know.
In the main event, we had Samoa Joe. No, I'm not making this up. This is the year 2024. Samoa Joe, the world champion, taking on Dustin Rhodes. Obviously, this is a play off of Cody finishing the story at WrestleMania. The same week, you have Dustin in a championship match. To what end, I don't know.
Technically, it was a championship eliminator match.
That's right. If he wins, he gets a championship shot. Right. Good call. Yeah, I mean, it was an okay match. Of course, Dustin had to get some color. That's even John Moxley is like, dude, you need to chill. Maybe it just seems that way because we don't see Dustin as often.
That's true.
They built up like the Roddy Piper spot off of Bret Hart at WrestleMania 6, where he was going to use the AEW title and the referees telling him, don't do it, which is really weird because that's something that you would see more in like a long-term story or something like that. So it just seemed kind of out of place. Eventually, Joe gets the upper hand. He uses the dirty tactics to get the ring. After the match is over, he's choking out Rhodes. Swerve Strickland hits the ring, picks up the chain, punch Joe's in the face. I feel like Scott Steiner right now. Senior Joe. He punches Senior Joe in the face, and Swerve stands tall at the end of the show. So, I mean, I would assume, I shouldn't say assume, but I think that Swerve Strickland is about to get his world title run, and why not? Joe is a great, credible world champion. Nothing really significant has come from his world title run, and it's Swerve is probably the most over guy that's on the roster right now. The crowd's ready for it, and AEW needs to start building up some goodwill. So I think giving Swerve his time is the right call.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm very, very pro Swerve. I'm glad Samoa Joe, exactly. I'm glad Samoa Joe got a world title reign. I think ultimately that's good for the AEW title lineage, and Joe deserves to be considered. Joe deserves to have the world championship basically in whatever company he works for. He's that credible of a wrestler, and I'm glad that he got a run with the title. But I ultimately think that putting the title on Swerve is the better call for AEW and just in wrestling in general right now, because Swerve is one of the hottest guys in the business.
Well, before we move on to SmackDown, I do just want to say it's a shame to me. I'm looking forward to this Dynasty show because of the quality of it, and I won't say that like now I don't want to watch anymore, but it certainly just puts a bad taste in my mouth that instead of just building on this quality show that they have, we're still dealing with the internet shit. Just Tony, if you can hear me, if this message can get out to you somehow, some way, just focus on you, dude. Just focus on AEW.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think they at the end of the day, taking pot shots isn't the best course for business. I get why you want to, and I get that WWE did spend some of the week, trying to take shots at AEW, but then go out there and show why you are the second company and why, maybe you could be the first company, and just go out there and put on the best damn show you can. And I think hopefully that's their focus now. Dynasty was supposed to be this high watermark for AEW. Tony talked about this a while ago, saying like Dynasty is going to be one of those shows that, Revolution was the point of Revolution was to bookmark Sting's career and to give Sting a proper retirement match. And the point of Dynasty was supposed to be, okay, this is what AEW is now going forward. And I think, by getting the title on Swerve, by setting up this Ospreay Danielson match, all that stuff, I think that's the direction that they need to go, and that's the direction they need to focus on, and hopefully they can just move past Punk, move past internet stuff, move past whatever, and just show, hey, we're the company that if you want you want good wrestling matches, if you want where the best wrestle, watch AEW and focus on that.
Well said. Let's go ahead and talk about the SmackDown after Mania. I really, really enjoyed this show. We're going to talk about the bloodline stuff. I enjoy where this is headed. But the show started with another cookie cutter promo from Cody Rhodes. This one was a little bit shorter than the Monday promo with Rock, but I've said this kind of all during this story thing with Cody, like him, I have to finish the story. It worries me a little bit that once the story is finished, where do we go with Cody?
Right.
So much about Cody Rhodes screams heel to me.
Yes.
The suits, the blonde hair, the pedigree, I don't know if he is long for this world as a babyface. And
Right.
if he is a babyface long term, it might be to his detriment.
Yeah, that's what happened with AEW. That was kind of the whole thing, where it's just like eventually people wanted to see, this Homelander version of Cody, and it never got to that point. He basically flat out refused to do that, and then it kind of got to the point where he kind of John Cena himself in AEW in a way, and people wanted the next thing, and he just didn't want to do that. And yeah, that is a legitimate concern in WWE, that like it could get to that point where, okay, now that he got the championship, which is what everybody wanted, like we need to get on to the next. We need to make this interesting, and I just worry that if it's going to be Cody being Cody, that might not be the best direction for him.
Sure, and I think if you analyze, for years everybody wanted, why don't they just turn Cena heel? I don't think that would have been the right call because John Cena is not a heel. It is the type of person he is ingrained in him. I wouldn't buy John Cena as a heel. Cody Rhodes, yeah, I can see that, and they have
Yeah.
a lot of ways they could go with
And
him as a
Cody's
heel.
been a legitimate good heel before. When he left WWE, even in WWE, he was a pretty good heel. But when he left WWE, and he was like, he was the guy that like split up the Bullet Club essentially, and kind of created a rift in the Bullet Club, and did all that stuff. Like he really is kind of a slime ball, and I think there is potential there that they could get into. Will they? I don't know.
I hope so. Because my hope is that one of your main events next year is a heel Cody Rhodes versus a babyface CM Punk. The crowd would eat that for lunch, dinner, breakfast, second breakfast, whatever. I know I would. But yeah, so after the Cody segment, we saw the Bloodline walking backstage. They went to go into their normal locker room, which instead of the Bloodline nameplate being on there, it now had Cody Rhodes' nameplate. Kevin Owens walks by, kind of smirks and says, "Sorry, you're not invited," which I thought was funny. What a perfect person to pull that line off.
KO just did a great job that entire episode with everything.
I love me some Kevin Owens. So great. Yeah. So we had a 3-way match, the first of 2 that we're going to determine the number 1 contender for Cody Rhodes is new, not Universal Championship. Now he's just the WWE
champion,
undisputed champion.
Yeah, I guess.
Which I'm more than fine with. I was never a fan of the Universal tagline, and just get the lineage back to where it needs to be.
Right.
But yeah, it was LA Knight versus Santos Escobar and and Bobby Lashley. LA Knight won, which to me just kind of signaled who was going to win the other 3-way match later on.
I was actually watching it today, and the neighbor kid was over watching it too, and he's like, "Who do you think's going to win?" And I'm like, "Well, really, the only scenario that makes sense is LA Knight winning this match, and then AJ Styles winning the next match, and that's how they can do their next match in their feud." And yeah.
Yeah, and the other 2 guys here, so LA Knight is still mega over with the crowd. I was a little worried that momentum might die a little bit. But the other 2 guys, where does Escobar go from here? Where does Lashley go from here?
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I think they're kind of pigeonholed in the roles that they have, where Santos Escobar is going to be kind of the leader of a faction that doesn't really win a whole lot. And Bobby Lashley is
stuck in purgatory.
Always a credible guy that you can put into a match if you need to, because just look at the dude. But at the same time, like, he's never, I don't feel like he's ever going to be like the guy for him again. He kind of had his run.
Yeah, he might occasionally get the transitional reign here or there or something like that.
Maybe, but yeah, he's not going to be.
And he's getting up there in age, so.
Oh yeah, he's
doesn't look
you'd expect. Yeah, no, he's in great shape and everything. It looks great, but the clock's winding down.
Sure. So then we saw a segment. In my eyes, I love this segment. This was the Bloodline, or the remaining members of the Bloodline were in the ring. We had Paul Heyman, we had Jimmy Uso, and Solo Sikoa. And Heyman cut a kind of babyface by proxy promo on behalf of Roman Reigns. Good God. On behalf of Roman Reigns, we're live, pal. Kind of saying we're all about accountability, gave props to Cody Rhodes, didn't give excuses. So right away, we're setting up that eventual Roman babyface turn in my eyes.
Yeah.
But Sikoa interrupts Heyman and talks about how losing has consequences.
Which is ironic coming from a guy who's 0-30 in his last 30 matches. But
that's so meta.
Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, then he scared the shit out of Paul Heyman, who is just fucking wonderful. Like, his acting, his overacting is just amazing. Heyman looked like he was going to piss himself. Sikoa pushes him to the side and gets in Jimmy's face. Again, this is movie stuff. Hugs his brother, tells him that he loves him, and then destroying him along with the help of a now freshly debuted Tama Tonga has joined WWE. For those of you who may not know, he was big in Japan. Brent, what can you tell us about Mr. Tonga?
Well, Tama Tonga was one of the founders of the Bullet Club, and has been mostly in the tag team scene in New Japan.
Haku's child.
Yeah, no, not biologically, but he's his adopted son. Technically,
Gotcha.
I think he's technically a nephew, but Haku adopted him as his son or something along those lines.
What a stand-up guy.
But yes, so he's part of that, but also Haku is kind of one of those honorary bloodline people that isn't technically, blood, but an honorary Oos, if you will. And
if Sami Zayn can be in the bloodline, I think Tama Tonga can be in.
Yeah, right. And but yeah, overall, I mean, he kind of decided 5 years ago or so that he was going to be more of a singles guy instead of he was teaming with his with Haku's biological son Tangaloa. But then they kind of was like, I'm going to do my own singles thing, and kind of treaded around the never open weight title area. Held that a few times, but never really ascended above that, and just kind of was one of those mid-card New Japan wrestlers for most of his run there.
Gotcha.
This guy, so
he's got a good look. I thought he looked intimidating. He looks to be in great shape. So the attack is on Jimmy. Heyman is screaming, "What are you doing? This is not what the tribal chief wanted." After it's over, they do the whole finger in the air thing. Heyman reluctantly does it, grabs his cell phone, and begins to say to Siri, "Call Roman Reigns." The phone is snatched out of his hand by Solo, who then smashes the phone. Again, Heyman is looking on in disbelief. They set up the chair and pulverize Jimmy's neck with a cannonball spot in the corner, while Heyman looks like he is just, beside himself, begging for mercy. I thought this was a good segment, and it was vicious, and that's how it should be when you have such a long arching storyline, and now we're going new places with it. And that's what I really like, is that it was something different. It's not going to be a slow burn of, is Roman going to come back? And just right away, this is different. So I liked it. Heyman, I thought, was the MVP of this segment. And even I'll give some credit to Solo. He can be shaky on the mic, but he seemed legitimate in this segment.
Yeah, I normally I'm pretty I will criticize Solo's promo stuff and all that. Like, dude's relatively green to all aspects of wrestling, really. I mean, he pretty much was hot-shotted. He was signed in NXT. He didn't really have much of a background before even showing up in NXT, and then basically got hot-shotted to the main roster really quickly, just because they wanted to incorporate him into the bloodline thing. And so, yeah, I mean, dude's got a lot of work to do, but at the same time, he did a wonderful job with this segment. So
next up, we had Braun Breaker squashing Cameron Grimes, who, I'll be honest, when I saw him in the ring, I thought he was a local talent, and I'm like, oh, he kind of looks like Cameron Grimes. And then I was like, oh, that's Cameron Grimes.
Yeah, right.
No entrance. I'm not a huge Cameron Grimes fan, but I imagine that he does have his fans, and this must have been kind of difficult match to watch. It's just complete squash. Breaker looks great. I shudder to say it would be hard to screw him up, because I've said that so many times with WWE guys in the past. But God, what a specimen! The way he runs the ropes, the intensity, maybe the best spear I've ever seen. I think it's either him or Rhino, but just destroys Cameron Grimes. It was just that, a squash match. Not much to be said there other than, okay, they're building up Braun Breaker. And I still hate that name.
I agree that I hate that name completely. And I agree that normally I hate the spear and I wish nobody would ever use it, but Braun Breaker is one of the exceptions to that rule because he actually does a really damn good one. And as a Cameron Grimes fan, as like the only people, as like the only member left in the Cameron Grimes fan group, I that was hard to watch. But I mean, I get where they're coming from, and that's kind of the spot that he's got on the main roster. I would just wish that they would have. I wish they'd do something with him, but it was one of those like he did everything he could do in NXT, and then they're like, "Well, I guess we're going to bring you up to the main roster," but then they never use him in any sort of meaningful spot. And like, really, this was like, I don't even know the last match he had before this one, so it's just like, just such a weird spot. But I guess it made sense for him to be in it, but I just wish something would happen with Cameron Grimes. Like, I know you're not going to have him. I know you're not going to have Cameron Grimes be the guy, but at least establish him a little bit.
It's if the tradition of the post WrestleMania cuts happens, I don't feel great about his chances.
Right. No, totally agree.
Next up, we had Bayley coming out for a promo. Again, it's one of the things that kind of sucks about these post-Mania shows is like you just get the babyface cookie cutter promos. Thank you. You deserve it. Thank you. Thank you. It's all because of you guys, blah, blah, blah. Right. We had Tiffany Stratton come out. Again, another NXT stalwart. Who I think a lot of people didn't really see coming as far as becoming this great in-ring worker. From what I've seen of her, I really, really enjoy her stuff. And she's got some personality. It's a little bit cliche, the old blonde bombshell, I'm better than you stuff, but she pulls it off well. She was interrupted by Naomi. They ended up having a match, which I was kind of surprised that Naomi won. Maybe, I guess, not surprised, but that it was just kind of a clean win. And I guess we're going to get a Bayley and Naomi match. I don't know where that's going, if Naomi's going to turn heel or what the deal is there. But before, I can't remember if this was like before or after, we had another Bloodline segment where Heyman was coming out of the trainer's room after checking on Jimmy. And the way he walked out of that room, you would have think that, he just read Jimmy his last rites. He had tears in his eyes. He was then confronted by Tama Tonga, who said something along the lines of by orders of the tribal chief. We then see Solo appear again, who kind of looks at his taped up thumb and gave it a nice smile. So with this Bloodline stuff, what I like about it is that we have questions. So is Solo the new tribal chief? Is The Rock the tribal chief? Is soon to be debuting Jacob Fatu the new tribal chief? These are all things we don't know. Where does Heyman play into all this? Like, where does Roman play into all this? This is, if you're booking a wrestling program week to week, that's what you want, is people wondering and asking questions and wondering what's going to happen next.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I don't really have anything else to add. They're doing what they need to with the Bloodline going forward, because at this point it's kind of hit a standstill, especially if Roman's not gonna be around right away. It's gonna take a little break, which sounds like that's gonna be the case. Like, build some intrigue, build some drama, build some new members, whatever.
Next up, we had a tag match. Again, this was something that we kind of saw mostly on Monday night. It was Chelsea Green and Piper Niven. They asked Nick Aldis for a match because they were mad about what happened on Monday, or
right.
So of course I'll give you a match, and you have to wrestle Jade again. So it was Jade and Bianca Belair, or Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair in that tag match. Yet another squash match. This only went a minute or two. Bianca really didn't get much offense in. Once Jade got the tag, she hit Chelsea with a pretty rough looking sidewalk slam and then hit her finisher. I'm a little worried about Jade Cargill, which WWE is building her by, again, the squash match, but they also are giving her their very heavily scripted promos that are just the catchphrase, right? Oh, what is it? The storm is coming, or something along those lines. And here's something you probably didn't expect. I'm going to compliment AEW on the way they use Jade Cargill. While I'm sure she had written promos, I wouldn't be surprised if she had a little bit more input on those, because she, at least the charisma came out more. It felt like she was delivering a promo and not reading a script or memorizing a script. And so far, Jade has come off very unnatural to me. And it seems like, whether it's in the ring, whether it's on a promo, that she's thinking. And friend of the show, the Sean O'Connell, mentioned something about, I think it was the Brewers earlier today, that if you're thinking, you're stinking. So, yeah, Jade, maybe the best looking female I've seen in wrestling. And I don't mean that just in the creepy, like, God, she's hot way, but like, she's a beautiful woman with just the best body I've seen on a female.
Yeah, sure, right.
They always talk about how she's straight out of a comic book. And again, it would be, I'd say it'd be hard to screw her up, because just everything about this woman oozes charisma. But now, the way that you have her delivery in these promos is less than charismatic.
Right. And if Jade Cargill's what is rumored or whatever, that Jade Cargill came to WWE to become a bigger star, to launch that into the next phase of her career, if that's to go to Hollywood or whatever, this is a rough first step in that direction, if that's what the goal is.
Yeah, and obviously it's very, very early in her WWE career. I do think she is in the right place if that is what her goal is, but I hope that they let her get a little bit more involved in the stuff she's doing,
Right.
and do things that feel a little bit more natural.
Oh, absolutely.
What
I
I
get the
really, really,
I get the squash matches. I get all that stuff, because that was a lot of her AEW run too. Was, hey, go out there, do your 3 moves, and win the match. Um, I get that stuff, but yeah, I mean, they need to let Jade be Jade.
well, and here's the other thing. Someone like Jade Cargill, does she scream babyface to you? Because she doesn't scream
No,
babyface to me.
no, absolutely not.
I really liked it when in AEW she had her little stable there,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's kind of, to me, that reminds me of Imperium, where you have the main star who is just the ass kicker and obviously the main attraction, and then you had the two little flunkies that kind of just get their ass kicked. Maybe that could be good for Jade and WWE. Maybe not that exact scenario, but I think getting her a stable of people to kind of do her bidding, and why not? Maybe you take like Caden Carter and Katana Chance and give them something to do and let them
sure.
showcase their personalities, because they're a great team that isn't really getting much run right now. So
Yeah,
something along
if
those lines.
anything, that would have been a really good spot for Chelsea Green to be in too. But now that's probably not going to happen based off of this. But I don't know.
If you can't beat them, join them. Maybe, I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe.
But yeah, so after that we have our main event, or if this is the main event, maybe the second main event. Either way, this is winner of this match is going to face LA Knight, and the winner of that match will be the first championship contender for Cody. Again, the fact that LA Knight won, you had Kevin Owens in this match, Rey Mysterio, and AJ Styles, just made it pretty obvious to me that the Phenomenal One was going to end up getting this victory here. And again, I think I had the AJ Styles as Cody's first, title challenger
Exactly.
coming out of Mania. So again, not surprising here. And it's just not LA Knight's time yet. And you're not going to do a babyface program with him and Cody. That is one way to kill Cody's momentum.
Right.
AJ is the perfect guy that doesn't need a title win, and he can have an amazing match with Cody, get him over, have good promos. And I kind of like that they could do. Both guys were kind of like the TNA Impact guy. Like, I don't know how much they'll get into that. They could allude to it. But yeah, Styles gets the win here. Pretty good match. And, it's setting up our first promo between him and Cody. So what are your thoughts on AJ Styles as the first Cody Rhodes challenger?
I think it's kind of like Jey Uso challenging Damian Priest. It's obvious that, like, yeah, he's not gonna win the match, but it gives him a credible contender to face in a match. And that's going to be a legit good match. But at the same time, it's not like we don't know the outcome of it. Whatever. And then it makes sense the way that they did it too. With AJ Styles can get his win back against LA Knight. So when he's done with this Cody thing, they still have that feud going on, and they still can have a rubber match between those two at some point down the road as well. And yeah, I will say, one of my favorite things. Just kind of switch topics a little bit. Kevin Owens, when they came back from like the commercial break,
thank you,
whatever, and he was just standing in the ring, and he's like, "I've been standing in this ring for minutes now," and like breaking the fourth wall has just been one of my favorite things about Kevin Owens. And
yes, there was that classic photo from years ago when if you go to a WWE show live. During the commercial breaks, they just show promos on the Titantron, and they black out the lights in the arena, and it was just a shot of KO standing in the corner with his face down in the top turnbuckle, like pretending to sleep. Like that is amazing stuff.
Yes.
And then there was also a backstage segment where KO was walking by like a merch table.
Yeah, yeah, and, like a weird backstage table. Yeah, I don't know.
I forget what he did. He picked something up, but then like
the Detroit Tigers
yes,
commemorative title. He picked that up and he's like, "Oh, I like tigers."
Yes, and if you know Kevin Owens, he's like a zoo aficionado and animals, so that worked for his character. But then the other subtle thing that I thought was great is after he picked up the belt, he went back immediately and knocked Punk's t-shirts off the table. Like,
yeah, and there's the Kevin Owens shirt right there, and then he knocked the Punk one off of there too. And
I mean, that's a guy who's just constantly working. Yeah, God, I love me some Kevin Owens.
Yes,
I know that's your guy too.
Absolutely.
Well, I think we covered most of the happenings in wrestling this week. We have Monday Night Raw tomorrow. We have another episode of Dynamite. We have a SmackDown. And then also we have AEW Dynasty next Sunday. So I don't know. You up for doing a post-Dynasty show?
I don't know. I mean, we're staying in a hotel. I could maybe find some spot to do it in the hotel.
We'll figure it out.
I don't know.
Otherwise, maybe it'll be a Dynasty preview or maybe the next day. But
yeah.
We appreciate you guys that did tune in tonight again. And again, we'll keep this going for you. I'm enjoying it. Brent, I think we're building some good chemistry, but brother.
It's good to talk craps with you.
Got him hot. Yeah. All right, cool. So thank you so much for tuning into the This Is Awesome podcast. We will see you next time.
All right. See ya.